So back in October, I told you guys I finally put together the Amiga that I always wanted. 68030, Workbench 1.3, compact flash, installing games from floppy disk, internal accelerator card. I was in heaven. But since then, I was contacted by a company in Poland called 7-Bit, who have released an internal A500 accelerator called the Wicher. So I decided to investigate. So hold up. I know what you guys are asking me. Only a few months ago, I made a video called Pimping the Amiga in 2017. So why are we looking at a new accelerator? Is this any better or any worse? What's the deal? I thought you had the ultimate Amiga 500 setup. Well, I did, and I still do, and I do stand by that. However, having the option to pick from now up to 4 different accelerator cards for the Amiga 500 is a great thing for all of us. So let's go ahead and check out the Wicher 500i EX. The Wicher 500i EX accelerator by 7-Bit from Poland is a brand new internal card designed for the Amiga 500 and 500 Plus. It supports the Motorola 68000 CPU of speeds up to 50 MHz. Yep, you heard that right, 50 MHz. It also comes with a single 72-pin SIM slot for easily adding fast RAM of up to 8 MB in size. I'm using a 64 meg SIM, which works fine, but only notices 4 megs for some reason. Now, I did order a single 8 meg 50 nanosecond SIM, but it wasn't in time for this video. There's a 44-pin IDE header for easily connecting a 2.5-inch hard drive or compact flash device. It also contains a CR2032 coin cell holder for battery backup clock. It's a nice feature. It's amazing to me how many cards don't have this feature, and you have to rely on an external real-time clock add-on or internal battery to keep time. Finally, there's an SPI header on the board which can be used for additional expansions. More on that later. So how does a 68000 CPU clock to 50 MHz exactly? What kind of sorcery is at play here? Well, first of all, this isn't anything new. You may recall the individual computer's ACA 500 Plus allows for an overclock to 42 MHz. But going back even further to 1993, there was an A500 accelerator called the Super Turbo 28, which was overshadowed by the more popular cards at the time. The Super Turbo ran a 68000 that was clocked at 28 MHz. How is this even possible? Well, the 68000HC chip is a CMOS variant of the classic processor that's low power and runs at speeds of 8 to 20 MHz. It's found in many different devices, including arcade PCBs such as the IGS PGM motherboard, the Sega Genesis 2 console, and much more. Due to its low power consumption and CMOS circuitry, it only requires 0.4 watts of power to run at 20 MHz. Therefore, this chip is perfect for overclocking and one of the prime reasons why they are appearing in modern accelerator cards today. Of course, even with a large overclock, it doesn't hold a candle to a more powerful 68030 accelerator that's 32 bits, has instructions and data caches, and more advanced instructions that simply don't exist in the 68000. But raw performance is raw performance, so let's install the card into our Amiga 500 and see how well it runs. As this is an internal accelerator for the Amiga 500, we need to open the case. Just go around the case until all screws are removed, then flip the case over and lift the top portion off to expose the internals of the Amiga. Don't forget to remove the keyboard connector from the motherboard. The Wicher card fits into the 68000 socket. I've had my Terrible Fire TF530 card occupying this spot currently, so first let's remove that. Then I install a Kickstart 3.1 ROM image, as this is what's recommended to be used with the Wicher card. Now we fit the Wicher card into the 68000 socket. Because it's rectangular in shape, gently press down on the pins until the card is firmly in place. Install any SIM memory for additional fast memory and a compact flash card. I pulled this one out of my Amiga 600. In order to boot from IDE Compact Flash, we need to tap 2 pins on the Amiga's expansion, one for the interrupts and one for a signal called OVR. The packaging comes with 2 wires that can easily be connected to tap the interrupt signal from the CIA chip and the OVR line from the Gary chip. These clips are a snug fit and a good feature, especially for those people who aren't experienced with soldering. I was a little concerned that the SIM memory would be raised too high and conflict with the keyboard, but it turns out there is plenty of clearance. No issues here at all. Now that we're all set up, let's test this card out. The software that comes with the card is excellent. Called Wicher Prefs, it allows you to easily change the CPU clock from 7 MHz up to 50 MHz. You can also turn off and on the expansion RAM you have installed. Enable and disable the IDE and SPI headers too if you choose to do so. There are a few experimental options too to tweak the RAM settings. One of them, interestingly enough, allows for RAM up to 128 MB in size. Sadly, this doesn't look like it's currently implemented at this time. Clicking Save will retain these settings on next reboot. I tested a 35 MHz clock. Sysinfo reports it's running at 2.8 MIPS. I tried games that aren't blitter locked to take advantage of the faster processor clock speeds, and this is how well they perform. .35 MHz is rock solid. I had no stability issues at all at this speed. I upped the ante to 42 MHz clock. Sysinfo now reports 3.31 MIPS performance. Sadly, stability was compromised at this speed. I had a few random freezes during gameplay, so in the end I decided to drop back down to the 35 MHz. So to be clear, the card advertises speeds up to 50 MHz. It doesn't promise you that it will reach this speed and be stable, but I think I can actually get better speeds if I buy a faster 68000. My chip is rated at 10 MHz. eBay sells 20 MHz variants that would potentially overclock better, and because they are cheap, I picked up 2 of them to see if I could hit a stable 50 MHz. The RAM that you use would also be a factor here as well. But that's not all. Because you have up to 8 MB of fast RAM, this card is a dream for WHD load. Because you are using a 68000, compatibility is some of the best I've seen with very little crashes and errors. I installed Tiny Launcher, a very excellent front end that will boot and play all my WHD low games when I hold down the right mouse button. While I love the Terrible Fire card that we looked at in the Pimping My Amiga in 2017 video, it only has 2 MB of fast RAM and unfortunately is simply not enough for WHD load to be viable. This card ticks all those boxes. And before I finish up, the SPI header allows for easy expansion of add-ons. Currently in development is a MP3 decoder very similar to a Prisma Megamix card for an Amiga 1200. It will support MHI and audio streams just like the Prisma card as well as MIDI. so I will definitely take a look at that when it's released. So in conclusion, how do I feel about the Wicher 500i EX Accelerator card? Well, let me tell you this. Now, the first thing I will say is competition and more hardware for the Amiga is always welcome. The fact that the Amiga 500 all of a sudden out of nowhere is getting so much love and so much support with accelerators is only a good thing for the community. So now we have the Vampire card, we have the Indivision ACA 500 Plus, we have the Terrible Fire TF530 card, and now we have the Wicher 500i. Now all these cards have been built by enthusiasts and professionals that know and love the Amiga. Now, how do I feel about the Wicher card? I think the Wicher card is fantastic. Given the fact that it's an accelerated card, but only has a 68,000 processor in it, but you can accelerate it to speeds up to 50 megahertz and have the ability to drop in a 72-pin standard SIM RAM up to 8 megabytes and have compact flash, makes this card a WHD load dream. Having an Amiga 500 means that you can finally install this card into and be able to use WHD load. Now, a lot of people like and use WHD load on a daily basis, and this card, in my opinion, is the best option you can get for WHD load. Now, you may be asking, well, what about the ACA 500 Plus or the TF Terrible Fire cards? They will work with WHD load, but the problem with the Terrible Fire card is it only is 2 megabytes of fast RAM on board, which means that things will run slower, and in some cases compatibility will be reduced because there are some instances where games need at least 4 megabytes of fast RAM for WHD load. As far as the ACA 500 Plus by individual computers go, I mean, that will work fine with WHD load, but for me, and I've mentioned this in the past, I'm not a huge fan of cards that sit outside of the Amiga. I want an internal accelerator where I can install it internally and close the lid and close all the expansion ports and everything like that and just kind of button up the machine. You may not feel the same way about that, and that's okay, but for me, I've always wanted an internal accelerator. So if you're a fan of WHD load, or if you want to use WHD load and you have an Amiga 500 and you don't want to have to mess with an external accelerator that hangs off the side of your Amiga, then the Wicher 500i is probably the card that you want to get. It's fantastic for WHD load. It works amazingly well, and using something like Tiny Launcher, which we saw in the video, means that you can have an easy menu system to play all your favorite Amiga games at the press of a button or a key press. Alright guys, I'm going to leave it at that. Let me know what you thought about this review of the Wicher 500i EX Accelerator card for the Amiga 500. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye for now.